Then the huge domino fell not long after that, here just a few days ago, when LSU hired Brian Kelly, the former Notre Dame coach. And obviously, I'm a little too close to that to really talk too objectively. Yeah, but I think I can, and I think the interesting thing about them hiring Brian Kelly is. One, Brian Kelly is the all-time winningest coach at Notre Dame. All right, he's been there 12 years. I think Lou Holtz was there, I want to say, 11 years. Knute Rockne was there 12 years or 13 years. Parsegan was there 11 years. So he's been there about the same time as some of these legendary coaches, and he's won 113 games, and Knute Rockne had 105. So he was the all-time winningest coach. No coach has ever left Notre Dame, okay? They've either retired or been fired. No coach in the history of Notre Dame has ever left the program for another program. Now, you can say, well, you can laugh at me and say, well, you think Notre Dame's great. No, I'm just saying, I'm just giving you the facts, okay? So that happened. Now, and then there was rumors that he was going to try to take Marcus Freeman, who was the defensive coordinator that he hired at the end of last year, who is considered by many to be the best recruiter in college football. He has brought in some great recruits for Notre Dame. In fact, he's got a top 5 recruiting class coming in for next year and a top 3 recruiting class committed for the year 2023. Kelly tried to get him to come to LSU. He was going to make him the highest paid assistant coach in the country. He tried to get Tommy Rees, who's the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame and who played quarterback at Notre Dame, to come to LSU. But for Notre Dame fans out there, the best thing happened that could have happened. Marcus Freeman's now the head coach, which lends you to believe they can keep their recruiting class. Tommy Rees is going to stay as offensive coordinator. Again, many writers and people following Notre Dame think that Brian Kelly held Rees down from an offensive standpoint. In other words, that Rees is a better offensive mind than many people saw because Kelly would not let him be as aggressive on offense as he wanted to be. So we'll see. So, from a Notre Dame standpoint, I think everything's going to be fine. But what I want to talk with you about is why do you think Brian Kelly left Notre Dame? I mean, you've got a team here this is unprecedented. You've got a team, just like we talked about, that could be playing for a national championship this year, theoretically, right? And you've got a team based on the recruiting classes that could theoretically be a national champion 1 or 2 of the next 2 years. So why would you leave Notre Dame? What do you think?
Number one, money. I'm sure they paid him a lot of money.
Sure they did.
But number two, I think he's been on he's had shots at the national championship before, right? 2012 and whatever year they get beat by Clemson.
2018 and then last year, 2020.
And last year they were in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Were they in the playoffs?
Yeah, okay. Beat by Alabama.
That's right. So he's had a run at the playoffs before, and I think he knows that they're not gonna win national championship anytime soon. I think he realizes that because he's had great runs at and they can't do it. I think he sees they can't compete with these SEC teams. They're not going to win it. So I think when he looks at this year or even the next couple of years when they're supposed to be even better, I think he looks at it and goes, we may get to the playoff again, but we're not going to win a national championship. And LSU right now is a lot worse than Notre Dame, but they have a much higher upside. Right. They're an SEC team. They just won the national championship a couple of years ago. Right. They can be very good. He can win multiple national championships with LSU.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think he's seeing that.
Right.
And I think he's also seeing, even if he wins the national championship at Notre Dame, I mean, that would be huge, obviously. They haven't won one since, 89?
88.
But I think he's thinking he has a better chance to win national championship at LSU. And what more can he really prove at Notre Dame? He's the all-time winningest coach.
Right.
I mean, yeah, he could bring them a national championship, which would be a huge thing, arguably even bigger than the all-time winningest coach.
Right.
But I don't think he thinks that's possible.
Right.
I think this proves that he doesn't think that's possible.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, so I think that's what I was thinking.
Do you think...
And the money, I don't know, who knows how much money they paid him.
Well, I heard at Notre Dame he was getting somewhere between $3 and $4 million a year, and at LSU he's going to get $9.5 million.
Yeah, and being a head coach Notre Dame's a little different because it's Notre Dame, but typically speaking, being a coach in the SEC, head coach gives a lot more weight than any other program. But Notre Dame's different because they're not in the SEC, but they're a huge program.
Right.
Notre Dame might actually be the most, what's the word? Prestigious head coaching job maybe in the world, in the country. But
I think it is, but then again, I'm a little biased. But I think, here's another thing that I'm glad I remembered to talk about is, I think there was a little bit the Notre Dame athletic director said that he could sense that Brian Kelly maybe was looking for other opportunities. I think he wanted to be in a conference. I think last year, when Notre Dame played in the ACC last year, I think it helped Notre Dame a lot because they played in the championship game. Now, granted, they lost it, but I think that helps Notre Dame, and I think he wanted to be in a conference, and Notre Dame's not going to be in a conference, okay? And then everything you said, I think, applies as well. I think he saw, hey, what more can I do at Notre Dame? I don't think we were ever going to have the players to compete with a Georgia or an Alabama or a team like that. So he moved on. I think the problem for Brian Kelly is going to be twofold. You and I both have talked about Ed Orgeron. Ed Orgeron is a perfect fit for LSU, okay? I mean, the guy's right out of the bayou. I don't see Brian Kelly fitting down there. I mean, he's a very prim and proper, sip your Coke and that. And LSU is not that kind of a school. And I don't know. Maybe he'll be real successful. But then again, you look at Notre Dame. Yeah, they play a good schedule, but they don't play Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M. I mean, he's going to have week after week after week of games that could go either way, and I think it's going to be tough. I really do.
It's also going to be week after week after week of primetime big games where they're in the spotlight.
That's right.
Notre Dame has a couple of games a year where it's real big. Other than that, they're playing Pittsburgh at 3 p.m. No one cares.
But see, here's the thing too. If he goes, let's say at Notre Dame, this has been proven. Let's say you go 9-1 or 10-1, and you lose your last game to Stanford or Southern Cal, and you're 10-2. Notre Dame fans they're going to be upset, but nobody's going to jump down your throat. Right. If he goes 10-2 and loses a couple years in a row to Alabama, they're going to be upset. Because if you do that, you're not going to win the West. And if you don't win the West, you're not going to be playing for the conference championship.
Yeah, I think the stuff you said about how he didn't seem to fit in down there, I think that could be the reason he's run out quicker than maybe he should be. But if he wins,
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
No,
obviously.
It doesn't matter.
But he has a shorter lease than like Orgeron would have, I think. Which I'm surprised they really got rid of Orgeron.
I am too.
Because he's like a perfect fit down there. He just won that championship a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think there was some other things going on there.
Probably was. Yeah. But where's he going? Is it by now?
Not yet. No, he hasn't. Nobody's hired him yet. Yeah.
Notre Dame should have hired him.
Yeah, right. Talk about not a good fit.
Swap coaches.
But yeah, so I'm glad Notre Dame has settled on Marcus Freeman only because it was really an unprecedented situation. And I think what pushed Notre Dame to settle on Marcus Freeman is I heard where the college football committee chairman, which this is ridiculous, said that they have a provision in their charter that says that when they get to this last vote come the end of the season, that if a marquee player is hurt and can't participate, or a coach leaves or can't, that they have the ability to factor that in as to whether that team should be in the playoff. And I'm thinking, that's ridiculous, okay? You should do it based on that team's performance, right? So I think they were kind of hinting that, hey, Brian Kelly's gone, you don't have a coach, maybe you're not going to get in, okay? So who knows? And that maybe that's the answer to why they jumped Notre Dame, Oklahoma State over Notre Dame. Because remember, that vote came out Tuesday night, and that was already given that he was leaving.
When did the college football committee say that stuff?
After the vote came out Tuesday night.
Oh, they said that stuff. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that's interesting.
I think that's why they jumped him.
That again shows you what you just said. That they look at future matchups more than they look at up to this point who deserves what ranking.
Right.
Which is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
I think they need to go back to something like a BCS system. Just do the BCS with the 4 playoff teams because they never had done that before. They've done the BCS to determine the top 2 teams, but not 4. I don't know.
Well, we'll get into that at another point.